For a long time, we kind of took the world's oceans for granted, right? They were just these huge, quiet highways for global trade. Well, that era is over. After decades of relative peace, the high seas are suddenly right back at the center of global power struggles.
So what's going on? Why are the oceans becoming battlegrounds? Again, it seems to have happened almost overnight. Well, that's exactly what we're going to break down.
All right, let's dive right in. It feels like naval power is suddenly back in the headlines, doesn't it? We've got these major hotspots flaring up all over the globe, and it's a huge reminder that controlling the seas, well, it's not something you can just take for granted anymore. Just look at the Pacific. Tensions there are, frankly, through the roof. Any kind of conflict over Taiwan would almost certainly become a massive naval war. And you've got China's huge, fast-growing fleet staring right back at the US, directly challenging decades of American dominance. And it's not just there. Head over to the Red Sea. You've got Houthi rebels attacking container ships, throwing one of the most important shipping lanes in the world into total chaos. It's messing with the global economy, and it's pulling Western navies right back into the fight. And then there's the Black Sea. The war in Ukraine isn't just a land war. It has this huge maritime angle. We're seeing everything from these wild naval drones to full-on blockades. Honestly, whoever controls the Black Sea could very well decide how that entire war ends. Okay, so we've got all these hotspots, but why should you care? Why does all this naval drama matter to, us, living our daily lives? Well, it turns out what happens on the ocean affects basically everything. The stakes here are absolutely massive. Think about this. Around 80% of everything that's traded globally travels on a ship. By volume, that's almost all of it. So the oceans aren't just important. They're the literal arteries of our global economy. If they get clogged, the whole system has a heart attack. And it's not just about the stuff you can touch. You're probably watching this right now thanks to the ocean. Over 97%, let that sink in, 97% of all internet traffic zips through these undersea cables. There are more than 574 of them. So our entire digital world, from bank transfers to streaming, depends on keeping the ocean floor safe. And you know what? This whole system is way more fragile than we think. I mean, just look at the last few years. The pandemic completely snarled supply chains. Then that one ship, the Ever Given, gets stuck in the Suez Canal and grinds world trade to a halt. Then Russia's invasion messes up global food supplies, and now the Red Sea attacks are making shipping costs skyrocket. It just shows how one little problem can create this giant, cascading disaster for everyone. So all these weak spots, these vulnerabilities, they haven't gone unnoticed. And that brings us to the real core of what's happening. All of this is feeding into this massive naval rivalry between the US and its allies on one side and a really, really rapidly rising China on the other.
And when you look at this rivalry, it's kind of like a classic matchup of different strengths. The West for sure still has the technological edge. We're talking super advanced submarines, stuff like that. Plus, it has this web of alliances all over the world that China just can't replicate. But, and this is a huge but, China has sheer numbers. It has the world's biggest navy by ship count and, maybe more importantly, this insane ability to just keep building more.
So yeah, the West has the cool tech, but its actual naval power, it's been shrinking for decades. I mean, just look at Europe. Between 1999 and 2018, they lost almost a third of their submarines and destroyers. And maybe the biggest deal of all, the actual experience of fighting a major naval battle, it's basically a memory. The last British officer who fought in the Falklands War has been retired for ages. And that brings us to the industrial side of things. Get ready for this number. China can build ships at a rate that is over 230 times that of the United States. Let me say that again, 230 times. So if you get into a long, grinding war where you have to replace the ships you lose, that number isn't just a statistic. It could be the thing that decides who wins. Okay, so all of this can feel a bit abstract. Let's make it real. Let's talk about the one scenario everyone is worried about, a potential Chinese naval blockade of Taiwan. This one flashpoint pulls together every single challenge we've been talking about. First off, what's a blockade? Super simple. It's when a military uses its navy to draw a line around a place and says, nothing gets in and nothing gets out. They basically try to starve it of supplies by force. So if China blockades Taiwan, what would it take for the US and its allies to break it? Honestly, the task is just monumental. Step 1, you'd have to deal with sea mines. We're talking spending a month, maybe more, just clearing these incredibly advanced Chinese mines where one wrong move means your ship is gone. Okay, let's say you do that. Step 2, you have to fight your way through the entire Chinese Navy, the biggest navy on the planet, just to punch a hole. And step 3, even if you manage all that, you're not done. You have to keep that supply line open for months, escorting cargo ships through enemy waters while you're constantly being attacked. It's a nightmare scenario. And could the US even do it? That's the big question. And a lot of experts are really not sure. It's a huge strategic problem. Taiwan's main ports are on the west coast, literally facing China. The ports on the eastern side are safer, but they're cut off by a huge mountain range, and the only way to get supplies from them is through a few tunnels that would be super easy to bomb. And trying to fly supplies in? Forget about it. It would likely be impossible under a sky full of Chinese jets.
So that's just one scenario, but it tells you everything you need to know. It shows us that we can't think about naval power the same way we used to. To deal with this new reality, we need a totally different mindset.
Here's the big lesson. For the last 20 years, it's been all about small, elite, high-tech forces for things like counterterrorism. But that's not the game anymore. In this new era, size matters again. Mass, scale, industrial power, that's what counts. We're seeing it in Ukraine. Long, brutal wars of attrition chew through equipment. You need a ton of ships, planes, and ammo, and you can't just build that stuff overnight.
And the numbers really tell the story here. In just the last year, China added about 30 new warships to its fleet. 30! That brings them to around 370 total. The U.S. Navy? It has about 291. And the projections show the U.S. fleet staying flat, or even getting a little smaller, while China's just keeps growing and growing. The lines on the graph are going in opposite directions.
So, what does the West need to do to even compete? It's a huge list. You don't just need more ships, you need the entire industrial base to build and fix them. You need to double down on diplomacy, focusing on ports and alliances. You need to rebuild your own cargo fleets because you can't fight a war without supplies. And maybe most importantly, you have to train a whole new generation of sailors for a kind of intense, high-stakes naval combat that they've only ever read about in history books.
And that leaves us with this really chilling thought from history. Think about it. Right before the massive Battle of Jutland in 1916, none of the British admirals, commanding the most powerful navy in the world, had ever actually fought in a major naval battle. They just took command of the seas for granted. And when you look at the world today, you have to wonder, does that sound a little too familiar?